So here we go. This is the M18 Hellcat. This was actually a vehicle designed by Buick, but the engine would be a Continental engine. This would actually spawn from the T-76 tank destroyer prototype, which was a 75mm gun motor carriage. It would also spawn from other vehicles prior to that. Now what we have here is we have a torsion bar suspension with very large road wheels. This was actually very weird on American track vehicles at the time. We really liked our bogey systems with smaller road wheels, unfortunately. Up here we have an American GI. Say hi.
How's it going?
Now the suspension does have return rollers. Here we have the logo of Tank Destroyer branch, which is actually, before anybody thinks it's a panther, it's a cougar eating a tank. Or that's what Tank Destroyer doctrine says it is.
Across the battlefields of Vietnam.
You have the 76mm M1A2, which was also shared with later model Shermans. Yeah, Tank Destroyer brand, or Armor Board did want a hole puncher. The one thing that upsets me with the history of the Sherman is everybody thinks the Sherman was undergunned. Let me just point out, no one ever said Hellcat was undergunned. It's the same gun. The armor's really thin. Basically, I think the turret was like proof enough against 30 caliber ammunition, if I recall in my research. Hull would prevent 50 cal, but the armor was paper, like the thickest area was like 1 inch of armor. But this was built for speed. As I said, it's got the Continental engine. This thing actually did hold the speed record for an armored vehicle up until M1 Abrams with its turbine engine. So the turret would also be later seen on other vehicles. They were actually putting, the Chinese were taking the M42 Duster, which is just the hull, and they were putting the Hellcat turrets on the 42 Duster to make the Type 64s. This vehicle, I've been informed, actually did see service in 1990 in Yugoslavia, well actually in Bosnia, and they were using it as a machine gun tank, and then this was brought back over to the country. Also some features I do want to point out, there was actually a lot of concern about the Hellcat when it was first introduced. One thing is there was actually units who didn't want to go to Hellcat. They wanted to keep M10 Wolverine. But the biggest concern was the shape of the vehicle and the road wheels. To understand and do research on Panther M10, which was a Panther tank mocked up to be an M10 tank destroyer, I don't know why. It would have been better mocked up as a Hellcat because of the road wheels. There was a lot of concern that this was going to be confused with a German vehicle through a gunnery scope. Okay. And mostly it was picked as Panther. People figured this would be mistaken as Panther. Although Panther's a bit taller than this is, and bigger. It's a beefier vehicle. Oh hey, they got it open. It's not pretty, but here we have the engine, the Continental engine. There's actually some speed records of this vehicle. I heard on the Autobahn up to 70 miles per hour. So that's actually a pretty fast vehicle. They're all steel tracks. These doesn't have the rubber track pads. And that's really all I can say about the vehicle. It does have an open top turret. And really the only defensive machine gun, as like I said with tanks earlier, they would have coaxial, they would have bow machine guns. This doesn't have that. The only thing it does have is a 50 caliber for anti-air defense, but obviously it can be turned on infantry. This was not meant to be a tank whatsoever. Hence is why there's no bow, there's no coaxial. Tank Destroyer branch did not want those in the vehicles. This was actually set up to be an ambusher. They would find out where the enemy was, they would deploy these in an ambush fashion, and they would engage and kill. They have a very good combat record against Tiger. They have a good combat record against Panther. The hallmarks of the vehicle is really the speed and the agility of the vehicle. However, it's actually debatable on how effective the speed was. Pretty much it's been discovered, or so far been discovered, that the speed of this vehicle has never determined an outcome of any battle it was in. Another reason too, another thing to point out is, as I said a bit ago, it is open topped. It's actually, Tank Destroyer Branch wanted their vehicles open topped, and that was for view. It's easier to see something coming at you from an open top vehicle.
Yeah.
You can also use binoculars and things like that, where inside a turret with a roof, you can't use binoculars, obviously. You have spare track on the back of the turret. Ammunition would be actually stored in this bustle, and this bustle also worked as a counterweight for the 76mm gun. And there's some other areas too that the ammunition would be stored in the vehicle. But I mean, it was a decent vehicle. It served itself proud, even though it was the vehicle it's the vehicle Tank Destroyer Branch wanted. The problem is Tank Destroyer units never wanted it. They were happy with M10 Wolverine. There were some prototypes of this vehicle. One was T-86, which was an amphibious tank destroyer. Obviously, this is an amphibious. And there was also T-88, which had a 105mm howitzer. And then they also, I don't remember the designation, but they also tried to take and put the M36 Jackson turret on this hull, which was going to be called Super Hellcat.
So if speed wasn't the factor, was it its agility? Was it a deciding factor in a lot of the battles?
Well, no, they just determined that really wasn't a factor, because essentially, as I just actually, yeah, I'll answer the question. Pretty much what they found is basically Hellcat would be somewhere a long time before before it would actually go into action. The other thing too they found is, even when it flanked, it would flank somewhere, it would move up on the line, and by the time it would start its engagement, speed was no longer necessary. So essentially, there was actually a lot hindered by this vehicle's speed. I mean, the light tank of the time was Stewart, and Stewart couldn't keep up with this vehicle. The following light tank would be M24 Chafee. Chafee didn't keep up with this vehicle. So, you know, it was kind of a moot point of having a vehicle so fast when your reconnaissance units were not fast enough to keep up with it. So it's kind of debatable, and there's not necessarily any proof, but so far everything points at the speed was never really a factor of the vehicle. What I can throw out as a World of Tanks player, I have used the speed to get to a zone. But essentially it's one of those, once I get to a zone, I'm hulled down, I'm camouflaged, I'm not using my speed anymore. I'm only using the gun. And the speed just becomes a moot point. So that's, speed was there, but it wasn't necessarily an important factor. Even though Tank Destroyer Board felt it was, and at the time when they were looking at things in France, it probably was, because what they were looking at was early model Panzers that were very fast vehicles, you know, punching through the French lines, and they're looking at it going, okay, we need a tank destroyer we need a hole puncher that's fast, so we can react quickly. The only thing is, like, M10 Wolverine, if I recall off the top of my head, its top speed is like 32 mph. That's still faster than a Panther. Yeah. Panther's, I think, 26 mph. So it can deploy, even the M10 can maneuver fast. Now, there was a couple issues late in the war with the M10, or sorry, the M18. The main one was Cane Tiger. There was a lot of issues with this punching holes in Cane Tiger. So there we go. M18.
Thank you.